The first thing you probably notice when you hear the opening of movement 1 is the pulsating of the timpani, those even repeated low Gs, which are kind of sinister, I suppose. They maybe mean the tolling of bells, maybe suggests a heartbeat, maybe the steady tread of a funeral procession. I'm not really sure, but I didn't realise quite how important that was until I once had to rehearse this movement without the timpanist, and it absolutely fell apart because that pulsation is at the heart of it. Comes back later in the work too. It's got a structural importance. The music we hear rising up for the first few measures is kind of dark and chromatic and troubled sounding. The choir comes in chanting the words Requiem Aeternam on just one note. And that builds up. We never hear a straightforward major or minor chord. The harmony is all rather troubled and ambiguous and chromatic until we get to the word lux, light. Et lux perpetua lucea Deis, where for the first time we hear a straightforward major chord, F major. And that in miniature is the journey that the whole work makes, in a sense, from darkness to light. I think I might, after the event, have suddenly realised that there was almost a cinematic dimension to this, because you could think of the opening as being one of those Dracula films, you know, where the funeral party is gathered at the foot of the mountain in swirling mists and all dressed in black, very somber. And as they climb up, so the mist clears and finally the sunshine breaks through on the word et lux. And I once heard this done liturgically in a Catholic church in London, where it began with the clergy and the choir processing, all dressed in black, from the back of the church to the front. And just as they reached the front of the church and turned around at the altar, they timed it perfectly and we got to the words et lux perpetua. Anyway, all of this is really just a kind of preface or prelude to the work proper, because we then hit the main theme, Requiem Aeternam Dona Eis Domine. This was the first idea that came to me when I was writing the piece. And that really gives us what the subject is going to be, the kind of work it's going to be. It's fairly gentle, fairly intimate, already perhaps quite consoling, but of course it's not as easy as that. We're going to get some darkness along the journey. Te decet hymnus, the next bit of the text, more majestic, thou, O God, art worshipped in Zion. That's Psalm 65. And influence spotters will notice that when I use this rhythm, that's homage to a composer I'm very fond of and who I knew personally, Herbert Howells. He wrote a lovely requiem, not at all a liturgical work, it's a collection of memorial movements for unaccompanied choir really, but that's a rhythm that was one of his signatures. And I think it's always okay in a requiem to pay homage to earlier requiem settings. And so there's my homage to Herbert Howells. Exaudio rationem meam, that's really the climax of that little section of the movement. Hear my prayer, ad te omnis caro veniet, unto thee shall all flesh return. Then Kyrie eleison, the Greek text, which of course comes in ordinary mass settings as well as in requiem masses, to that same theme. Christe eleison, rather more impassioned, I suppose, rather more personal, more intense. And this is presented by the sopranos and altos with the tenors underpinning it. It winds down with the Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy. So there's our first movement. The drum beat returns in the last few bars. And I think it gives us a sense of the journey that we're going to make through the work as a whole.